Hey everybody, this is Spoonie, and given how many real-time strategy games are coming out this year, some of which that have already proven to be disastrous, I started to think about the history of real-time strategy, how we got here, and where we might be going with the genre. Real-time strategy games are a subgenre of games where players control units and structures under their command to secure areas of the map and destroy their opponent's assets. RTS games are characterized by the ability to play continuously, without taking turns, making quick thinking and fast decisions essential components of success. The history of RTS spans several decades and is marked by several revolutionary games that shaped not only the genre, but also had a considerable impact on video gaming as a whole. The dawn of RTS games is often thought to have begun with the game Dune 2 in 1992, but the genre can actually be traced back to the early 80s with The Ancient Art of War, which was released in 1984. The Ancient Art of War introduced maps where players could control units in real time. Although combat was still turn-based, the ability to move units around the map in real time was a first for video games. The Ancient Art of War also had a map editor and custom scenario builder, which was the first of its kind. The game was highly praised for both educational and entertainment purposes, and we can still clearly see its influence in games today. For example, the game Totally Accurate Battle Simulator is basically what this game would have looked like in modern days, minus the turn-based elements. But as revolutionary as the Ancient Art of War was, it was Herzog 2, aka Herzog 2 to our German friends, released in 1989 for the Sega Genesis that really laid the groundwork for future RTS games. Developed by Technosoft, it featured direct control of a main unit, which was a mech that had the ability to shift between its ground-based mecha form and a jet. The game also introduced core RTS elements including unit production, resource management, and base construction. Despite its innovative gameplay, Herzog 2 was not initially recognized as an RTS, partly because the genre didn't exist yet, but not being classified into a non-existent category doesn't mean it wasn't the first true RTS. Because it was. If you're enjoying this video and want to see more gaming news and updates, consider hitting that subscribe button, and if you've noticed I've missed some important games you think should have been mentioned, let me know in the comments below. If the 1980s laid the egg that would become real-time strategy, it was the 1990s that hatched it. Starting with a pivotal release by Westwood Studios called Dune 2, The Building of a Dynasty in 1992. Dune 2 was widely considered, and still is widely considered, to be the first true RTS, as it introduced a complete real-time strategy gameplay experience with base building, resource management, and unit construction. Players would collect resources to build various types of buildings, units, and there was a clear objective: defeat the opponents. Dune 2 cemented the template that many games still follow. Westwood continued to dominate the early RTS years with their Command & Conquer series, which started releasing in 1995. Command & Conquer introduced a modern military theme and a narrative-driven campaign, features that would become staples in many later RTS games. The success of Command & Conquer led to multiple sequels and expansions, each adding new elements and depth to the formula. Red Alert 2 and Command & Conquer Generals are to this day some of the best RTS games I have ever played. Around that same time, Blizzard Entertainment released Warcraft: Orcs and Humans in 1994, which brought the RTS genre into the realm of high fantasy and, I would argue, really began the genre's mainstream adoption. Warcraft offered a compelling storyline and a more accessible gameplay experience, which significantly broadened the genre's appeal. The sequel, Warcraft 2: Tides of Darkness in 1995, further expanded on this foundation and improved the graphics, added more unit types, and crucially added the game's most significant innovation, which was its robust multiplayer capability. Utilizing Blizzard's online gaming service called Battle.net, launched with the game's expansion Warcraft 2 Beyond the Dark Portal in 1996, players could now compete against other online players, which was a relatively novel feature at the time. Battle.net was designed to be fully integrated into Blizzard's games. Starting with Diablo, this integration allowed a seamless online experience where players could easily connect for multiplayer games without the need for third-party software, which was never simple nor stable. By the mid to late 1990s, the RTS genre was booming, with titles exploring various settings and mechanics. Total Annihilation, also released in 1997, introduced a new, larger scale to the genre that had never been seen before. Free from population limits, this was one of my personal favorites. The game had a robust modding community, and it allowed for a number of units on screen that just hadn't been seen before, and rarely has been seen since. Age of Empires in 1997 by Ensemble Studios introduced a historical theme where players advanced through distinct ages, each unlocking new technologies, buildings, and units. This new mechanic of progression through not just units and buildings but also technological eras added a layer of strategic depth that propelled Age of Empires and the real-time strategy genre into more homes than ever before. If you ask almost anyone who was old enough to play computer games in the late 90s what games they played, Age of Empires is almost guaranteed to be among them. The series was continued through a sequel and multiple expansions, and in 1999, Age of Empires 2 quickly became one of the most beloved games of all time. It still receives updates and expansions. Even today, despite being 25 years old, the game remains in Steam's top 100 played games each day. But in between the release of Age of Empires 1 and 2, something special happened that would redefine real-time strategy at the competitive level and even open the doors for professional esports. That something special was StarCraft. Developed by Blizzard and released in 1998, StarCraft became one of the most influential video games of all time. It featured 3 distinct races, Terran, Zerg, and Protoss, each with unique units and strategies requiring different styles of gameplay. The balance among these races and the game's compelling storyline were beloved by RTS fans, and the game very quickly became the gold standard of competitive real-time strategy, and at the time, competitive gaming in general. StarCraft became the key driver of the emerging professional esports scene, especially in South Korea. In a short 6 years, we went from Dune 2 to StarCraft. For anyone who has played both titles, you know how impressive that jump is. In 2001, a game called Empire Earth came along that briefly gained a large player base and maintained a cult following. The game was essentially Age of Empires, but extrapolated to cover the entirety of human history. You didn't just raise your civilization out of the Stone Age into the Iron Age, you took it into the modern era and beyond to the future. The game was far from the gold standard of competitive play, but it was a unique game that was really fun to play, unlike its subsequent sequel, but we won't talk about that. The new millennium continued to see RTS games evolve, with Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos releasing in 2002, which introduced heroes. Powerful units with RPG elements that could turn the tide of battles. Micromanagement was also emerging as a defining skill set that would separate the pros from noobs. People counted actions per minute and developed reflex-based strategies. Thanks to the impressive map editors Blizzard RTS games had become known for, the creativity of the community was also unleashed, giving birth to entirely new genres within and around real-time strategy. These new game modes were playable within StarCraft and Warcraft, helping to maintain players' interest in the titles, which now offered a new scope of replayability. And by this point, RTS had now become the titan of gaming, at least on PC. But much like Cronus fathering Zeus, real-time strategy would eventually spawn the very genre that would ultimately dethrone it. I am of course talking about MOBA, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arena, a genre that rose from the custom maps created by players in StarCraft and Warcraft. The first of which was Aeon of Strife, a StarCraft custom map that largely laid the groundwork for this new genre. But the game that brought it into the mainstream was without a doubt Dota, or Defense of the Ancients. This game was a Warcraft 3 custom map that was wildly popular, so popular that it was eventually built into its own game titled Dota 2, which is still among the most played games in the world. MOBAs like Dota 2 and League of Legends weren't alone in spurring the decline of mainstream RTS popularity though. Other games like Counter-Strike, Call of Duty, and the first-person shooters in general started to pull players away. In these games, competition was king, and these other genres offered more in terms of accessibility for competitive gameplay than the now twitchy reflex-oriented gameplay RTS required. However, titles like Supreme Commander in 2007 and later Planetary Annihilation, which were spiritual successors to Total Annihilation developed by many of the same team members, pushed the boundaries of scale and showed that you don't need to rely on Twitch mechanics to have a game that's both competitive and, more importantly, fun. Supreme Commander and Planetary Annihilation are to this day some of my favorite RTS games ever released, with vast maps and hundreds of units under the player's control. In 2010, StarCraft 2 was released. This sequel to the 1998 success definitely brought a resurgence of interest to the RTS genre. The game was critically acclaimed and once again cast a shadow over all other games in the category. StarCraft 2 and its subsequent expansions, Heart of the Swarm and Legacy of the Void, remain a staple in competitive esports today, although the game has recently moved to a maintenance phase of its development. Many of us are hopeful that Blizzard will one day announce StarCraft 3 and redeem itself as a leader in real-time strategy. While we've seen a few titles come and go over the years, and I skipped over some titles like Sins of a Solar Empire and Homeworld that definitely had a massive influence on the real-time strategy genre, this year has seen a sort of renaissance for real-time strategy. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite RTS games ever was Total Annihilation, so naturally I loved its spiritual successors like Supreme Commander. But a new spiritual successor is in development titled Beyond All Reason. It's still in development, but if you're a fan of the titles I just mentioned, I would recommend taking a look at it. You may also want to check out another similar game titled 0K, which is also still in development. The best part about both of these titles is they're both free to play. In the modern era, aside from this small renaissance, traditional RTS games have seen a decline in production as major studios have shifted focus to other genres. However, the legacy of RTS games persists, influencing a wide range of other games. New genres and hybrid games that incorporate real-time strategy elements like They Are Billions and Age of Darkness continue to be popular releases. Real-time strategy fans also have a lot to look forward to from major upcoming releases like Stormgate, which is in development by several members of the team that brought us StarCraft, as well as Zero Space, which also looks promising. Hopefully, we won't have to wait another 10 years for the next great RTS. Don't forget to hit that like button, it really helps my channel, and if you want to stay up to date on gaming news and developments, make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.